I remembered to hit the record button. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today as part of the RDA Virtual Plenary 22. My name is Robert Ping. I work for Indiana University in the United States, and I'm the program manager for RDA US. RDA US version 1.0, we're sort of calling it a little bit of a reboot. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can all see what we plan for today. I'll just have a couple of slides to share with you. All right, welcome to RDA Engagement in the Americas. As it says right here, this is Canada and US. When the RDA Secretariat reached out to us to have this session, they reached out to Lee and Mark from Canada and Beth Playley from the US and invited us to give a session specifically from our points of view in our regions. And I understand that our counterparts in South America will be part of the closing session for the entire plenary. So please make sure to go to the closing session to hear from our counterparts in South America. Today, we'll be hearing from several different people from each of our organizations. We are the Digital Research Alliance of Canada and the Research Data Alliance of the United States. Digital Research Alliance of Canada also is RDA Canada, so a couple different names there. We have several speakers today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves more fully. But as you can see on screen here, Lee Wilson is the Director of Research Data Management for the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. Beth Playley, the Executive Director of RDA US. Ferris Dane, a Data Analyst for the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. And Yolanda Maleko, Research Data Alliance of US. Rob Quick will be talking about the Tigris program as he is the Program Manager from RDA US. CJ Woodford is a project manager for the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and I'm the program manager for RDA US. So those are the people you'll be hearing from today, and we've broken it down into three parts. Part one, we'll have our leaders respectively talk about strategy in Canada and strategy in US, and then we will close our slides so we can see all of you, and we'd like to take questions. Part two will be implementation successes and impact within the regions. And again, we'll take time to questions. We can use the collaborative doc, or we'll take questions via Zoom. As far as I'm concerned, you can unmute, but you can also type those in chat. And then the third part, we really want to ask you to join us as we talk about joint cooperation within our two regions. And we have a discussion with all of you as participants, and we might hear from some more folks from both of our respective institutions as well. Great, we're over 30 participants. I'm so happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lee. He's going to talk about strategy coming out of Canada.
Great. Thanks so much, Robert. I'll just confirm, can people see my slides okay? Excellent. Hi, everybody. Lee Wilson, Director for Research Data Management with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. So the aim of my presentation during today's session will really be to highlight Canada's contributions to RDA in the national context of Canada through the work of the Digital Research Alliance. So to do this, first I will provide sort of a broad overview of the Alliance and its activities before handing things over to my colleague Ferris Dane, who will speak to the types of activities that the Alliance undertakes to contribute to RDA and RDA Global on behalf of Canada. I should note that while I'll be speaking today, the activities that I'll be speaking to today really only do cover the activities undertaken in the context of the Digital Research Alliance and its partners as a federally funded organization that provides and funds national data services. And my talk here does not cover Canada's contribution to RDA as a whole. I see a number of my colleagues on the call today, and I have no doubt that many other Canadian colleagues are contributing to RDA activities in a whole wide variety of ways that will not be captured here. So with that, before I get started, I would also like to begin today's presentation by respectfully acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is situated on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First, I'm going to provide an overview of the Canadian context by outlining the Alliance and its activities. So, not to be confused with the Research Data Alliance, the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and we typically call ourselves the Alliance, is a nonprofit organization funded by the federal government of Canada with the aim to advance and maintain national digital research infrastructure, or DRI as we call it. The Alliance is governed by an independent board of directors. It's guided by a researcher council, and it's accountable to our member institutions, which are situated across the country. Our mission is to convene experts and to fund research activities to create a strong, vibrant, and equitable digital research ecosystem. So backing up a little bit, what is DRI? As we all know from the work that we do, researchers need robust tools, specialized software, ample computing power, all of which to advance science, advance their research, protect their findings, and to maximize access to their data through tools that allow for the creation of fair data, data sharing, ultimately to support reuse and open science. All of these drivers speak to the need for comprehensive and, in some cases, and in the case of Canada, a suite of national data services. So we define national data services in the context of digital research infrastructure, and typically it includes advanced research computing or high performance computing, research data management, and research software. And then, of course, running across all three of those core pillars are the concepts of cybersecurity, as well as training and workforce development. So the Alliance is responsible for overseeing the operations and maintenance of Canada's national DRI services. So now I'll speak a little bit about Canada's Advanced Research Computing Platform. So in the context of this presentation and in the Alliance, ARC encompasses high-performance computing, data-intensive research, data management, and storage within this active space. And of course, it demands high-speed network connectivity, which is provided by a sister organization in Canada, Plenary. It requires access to world-leading software, as well as robust systems and standards to hold it all together. So currently, we support 5 national host sites spread across Canada, and we have federated user support that's delivered by staff who are distributed across a variety of Canadian post-secondary institutions from across the country. And you can see that on the map on my screen. Our systems today are a mix of general purpose and specialist systems, and we provide community cloud support alongside traditional high-performance computing. And this is because we serve a large and diverse research community across all disciplines, with a very diverse and varied needs, a set of needs and use cases that we need to deliver on. In addition to the National ARC platform, we also support a host of data services and programs that benefit Canadian researchers. So these include things like a data management planning tool, the DMP Assistant, which helps researchers develop DMPs in compliance with best practice and our new national RDM policy from our funders. We also support 2 national generalist or multidisciplinary repository options. So these are the Federated Research Data Repository and Borealis. And these provide storage, access, and preservation of data in compliance with journal and funder policies. In addition to data repositories, we also operate a service called Lunaris, which is our national data discovery service. And this allows researchers to find Canadian research data wherever it lives across over 90 Canadian data repositories. So there we harvest and aggregate metadata records from Canadian research data. The Alliance also supports vital infrastructure components within the open science ecosystem. And of course, this includes support for various persistent identifiers through 2 national consortia. So we have ORCID Canada for ORCID IDs, which are persistent identifiers for researchers, and DataCite Canada for DOIs which are, of course, persistent identifiers for research outputs, including research papers and data. Finally, a major driver for research data management in Canada comes from our RDM network of experts. And this is a volunteer grassroots community of practice of data and information management professionals from post-secondary and other research institutions across Canada. And now I'll speak to the RDM network of experts a little bit. So important to highlight here because it functions very similarly to RDA, but on a national scale. And the Alliance RDM team acts as the stewards and facilitators of the network and its various expert and working groups in a similar manner to the RDA Secretariat, as well as the Tiger programs launched in RDA Europe and RDA US, which you'll hear more about later in the session from Rob. As you can see from the slide, our expert groups touch on a variety of key topics in RDM spread across the research data lifecycle. The outputs of these groups contribute to the development of best practices, development of resources, of documentation, tools, as well as feed directly into the growth of our national data services. So we're continuously working to evolve and grow this network, and we're always looking for opportunities to connect the work that we're doing in Canada into the global context. And one of my hopes for today's discussion is that we can think about some potential opportunities for engagement globally with RDA, as well as with our regional colleagues. So to end my portion of the talk, I will speak very briefly to a developing vision for the Alliance's next funding mandate from the federal government, which will run from 2025 to 2030. And I will note as a caveat that our proposal has yet to be formally submitted to government. We're still in the process of developing it. And so really at this stage, I can only speak to it in high level terms, but I did want to give you a sense of where we're headed next. So the vision is built on what we see as some major emerging trends in the ecosystem. So first, we see that the volume and complexity of research data and the need for more compute capacity continues to increase exponentially. Second, and sort of whatever your thoughts may be here, generative AI is very much here. It's part of the scientific and research discourse, and it represents a clear and pressing need for national service providers to be providing increased compute capacity as well as access to high quality data sets. And finally, the need for increased national data security and sovereignty, which has to include considerations around Indigenous data sovereignty, is becoming increasingly critical. And we must tackle these issues while balancing the importance of fair data as well as open science. So now I'll speak quickly to some of the challenges in the current state of DRI in Canada that are motivating our proposal for the future vision. So while we do have a strong suite of national DRI services that you heard about today, there remain challenges which I expect will likely resonate with many of us on the call today. So while we have brought DRI under the umbrella of a single service organization, which was a great step to sort of rationalize service delivery and to help coordinate things on the national level. Our services still do remain fragmented, and researchers today aren't able to access everything through a single point of access or a single portal. There's also been a historical underinvestment in data and information management, as well as a lack of funding to enable much needed support, training, and policies around research software. Also, our host sites that I spoke about operate today in very high cost environments and are often co-located with post-secondary institutions and therefore, and also have a very high carbon footprint. So these would be things that we'd be looking to address. There's a lack of common policies, standards, and workflows across the national host sites, and this limits our national capabilities and coordinations. And we currently lack the capability and capacity to meet the needs of Canada's researchers as they exist today. In terms of our funding model and the way sort of funding works here, it's split between federal and provincial governments. And under the current cost sharing model, there is an equity between the provinces and institutions in terms of their contribution costs. So we have some provinces that are investing far more than they consume, whereas others are investing less, and still others aren't investing at all. In the same vein, different cost structures across the country are forcing trade-offs. So, for example, if we have very high electricity or real estate costs in a region, that can mean that we have less capacity to hire staffing or HQP. And this leads to an imbalance in service provision across the regions. Funding is also project-based instead of based on value or life cycle or progress towards specific national scientific and societal goals. And as we well know, project funding is not suitable for long-term management and sustainability of research data and software. So to that end, we're developing a future vision for Canada's national data services that aims to provide a truly national data platform with improved access to tools and services to better support researchers, as well as enable compliance with national policies. We aim to position Canada as a leader in mobilizing research data across academia, government research, and academic industry collaboration to gain new research discoveries, as well as to tackle national and provincial priorities more efficiently. In our current mandate, we work predominantly in higher education, and we believe that expanding to other sectors will reduce duplication of efforts across higher ed and government research, for example, as well as potentially introduce enhanced sustainability through collaborations with industry partners. This vision will also significantly enable enhanced security and sovereignty of Canada's research data by making it a primary consideration in the development of the next generation of our data and compute systems. We also plan to continue to build the talent and workforce that are required to enable a strong data-driven research sector across academia, government, and the private sector through enhanced training, learning, as well as workforce development platforms and initiatives. Our proposal also aims to increase Canada's compute and storage capabilities into the realm of exascale, and this would put us in alignment with our G7 peers, and would go a long way to help address the exponential growth in compute capacity that's required to remain competitive, to provide the resources that our researchers need, as well as to allow us to attract talent and research mandates to Canada. Finally, we'll be seeking to move Canada's high-performance computing facilities towards net zero carbon emissions, while also achieving the benefits of scale that accompany national coordination. So that was just a very high-level overview of the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, our national data services, and a quick overview of our future direction. Now I will turn things over to my colleague Faraz to speak to the Alliance's contribution to RDA Global.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. So a quick introduction about myself. My name is Faraz Dain, and I work with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada as a data analyst. And prior to that, I hold a different position as a national international relations. And in that position, my key responsibilities were to be the touch point between the alliance and our different partners. And I don't see the slides anymore. Yeah. So I played a role to be the touch point between the alliance and our different partners and stakeholders, but also to work closely to collaborate with our signed partners, like, for example, in this context, RDA. Next slide, please. So the Alliance contributes to RDA in different ways. For example, last year, we renewed our partnership with RDA for 2 years. And because we see a lot of benefits in being in collaborating with RDA, so are willing to continue working with them. So we are probably going to renew our MOU with them, our partnership. And when we signed the agreement last year, we agreed to support RDA by providing funding to RDA Global, but also in-kind staffing support for the Secretariat. And that's me. And the agreement says that I have to provide at least 50% of my time when RDA needs my help and support. And other than that, we also contribute to RDA governance bodies and groups like here, Lee Wilson, CJ, and we coordinate RDA in Canada. So RDA in Canada is still now at an I would say mid stage, and we hope to have a more mature stage in the near future. Next slide, please. Like I just mentioned, we contribute to RDA governance bodies. This is the list of the alliance staff that are part of RDA. We have Lee Wilson, co-chair of RDA Council, Victoria Smith as technical advisory board, Marcus Clausen, myself as RDA secretary, and CJ, co-chair of GORC. But also we have multiple alliance staff that are members of different interest groups, working groups, but also committees of practice. Next slide, please. But here I will talk more about the kind of support that I provide to the RDA as part of RDA Secretariat. I here highlighted three examples. So the first one is the RDA pathways. Some of you, maybe if not all, have already heard about this or used it during the last plenary. So RDA internally worked on developing these pathways to help the community and the users to find the different interest groups, working groups, and recommendations outputs based on different themes. And by themes, I mean fair, care, trust, as an example, data infrastructure and environment, or again, research software, for example. If you are more interested in research software and you would like to see what kind of recommendation outputs have been produced by RDA groups, you can find it easily by looking to these pathways. So how I contributed to this RDA pathways was to work on a set of keywords that define each pathway. Then using a programming software called R and an open source package called Tidy Text, I could do some text mining, and that way I could map the different RDA groups recommendation outputs to these RDA pathways. And last year during the P21, we produced the first RDA pathway synopsis document, so to enhance the plenary experience by providing an overview of all the pathways, plus the relevant plenary sessions, like I mentioned, RDA groups, recommendation outputs. And for this VP22, we also did the same thing. We just updated the P21 by including the new groups that were formed by then, but also to deleting the groups that are no more active. And we also included new recommendations and outputs. Another example as a project where I provided support is the new RDA website. So we started working on this project 2 years ago. And since the beginning, I was a full member of this project, and we met on a casual base, weekly or bi-weekly, with the company that is responsible of renewing our website. And every time that my help was needed, so I provided that kind of support. And again, for this VP22, I'm hosting some sessions. I'm kind of the technician for different sessions. For example, when there is any kind of technical issue, I'm here to help fixing that. So these are examples of what kind of support I provided to RDA. Next slide, please. Thanks. That was all from me.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Faraz. So Robert, I think we'll turn things back over to you and Beth for the next presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. It's great to hear about what's happening with our neighbors in the north. So I appreciate that. Beth, we're going to turn it over to you. I'm just reminding folks that we are posting PDFs in the chat for those of you who would like to follow along with the PDF. And also there's a collaborative doc in the chat that I'm sharing over and over as new people join. We're happy to have over 40 participants now. So Beth, if you'd like to talk about RDA in the US, thanks.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Robert, and thank you all for being here. We've appreciated the opportunity to pull together at least a Northern American view as we share this with you, and look forward to extending that further to our colleagues to our south. I am Beth Plaley. I am the Executive Director of RDA US in the United States. I'm a faculty member at Indiana University in Bloomington. I am part of a team that represents RDA US that I'll speak to. Let me also, as as Lee has done, just acknowledge and recognize that Indiana University Bloomington, which is where I'm located, was built on indigenous homelands of the Miami, the Shawnee, the Potawatomi, and the Delaware people. So, and as Robert mentioned, RDA US has been around for quite some time. We've had the pleasure to rethink its relevance recently, as of about a year ago. So what we're representing here is a in a pivot, slightly pivoting from the RDA US that has been going strong for the last decade. So we hope that, I think that pivot is useful, just in making the entity relevant to all of us in the US that see value in RDA US, and that has been the driving goal, with our thanks to Rebecca Costello for the many years of leadership she brought to the RDA US and the work that she did on behalf of the region and the US. So we see RDA and RDA US as advancing research and education in the region and globally. So RDA US, and I need to I'll make this a bit smaller here. There we go. RDA US brings a global perspective on the benefits and challenges of open science. So you'll see this in the slides, that we are targeting the challenges of open science and using the US as a lens for that. So open science within the US brings a global perspective on open science. So RDA US benefits from the global perspective of RDA in bringing attention to the problems of open science. We bring solutions developed within RDA to the US. So we're a vehicle by which the work that is going on in RDA that's relevant to the US, by which that can flow and have more impact in the US, and also helping the US become an international leader in implementing open science standards. And by bringing the challenges we have in the US to the global audience of experts, which represents RDA Global. So, in working through what this organization, the RDA US organization is, we saw the need for bottom-up researcher-led answers to US challenges. We know the notion of working groups and interest groups that RDA espouses and has espoused from its beginning 10 years ago acknowledges this bottom-up nature of working groups that can be formed to solve specific problems that are identified, not in a top-down fashion, but in a bottom-up fashion. And then also we saw considerable strength in the community of people in the US that are members of RDA, that identify as being part of the RDA community. But yet we could strengthen the connections across ourselves as a community. And you'll see through our programmatic efforts, particularly the Tigris program, that there are things that we can do to help facilitate that bottom-up activity. And one of those things that's needed is, well, what's already there, and what can we, what is our community already doing? So some curated resources to target what it is that's of value in RDA, developing out the community of practice, and then serving as a basis for tying together voices across the United States through organizations that some are represented here, AGU, World Data Systems, Helios, that together we can strengthen a shared voice on matters of importance in the United States. So we consider ourselves a group that consists of our program officers and our steering committee, of which you see that collective body, the governance body listed here. We tried to draw from, we tried for diversity. We tried to also have specific ties to key constituent groups that you'll see represented here also. So we see the organization of the group of the organization as having the program officers, and Robert mentioned who we were in the beginning of this slide, where you see the functions. I won't go through these functions here, but so we're certainly doing the program management and setting the strategic direction, handling the communications, and through the Tigris program, the facilitation, working group facilitation. And then what we did do is we identified several thrust areas. I'll talk to those in another slide that kind of we need to focus somewhere. So the focus is on cyber infrastructure and artificial intelligence is one, open science is another, and open software is another. And then our steering committee. Our program right now is the Tigris program. So again, so these areas, these targeted areas, we've got people that are leading these, particularly kind of focused in these areas. And some of you may know Zach Chandler. He's been active in RDA for quite some time and very active in the open science space. So he is, and he was not able to be here today, but is bringing to RDA US just kind of a focus around. He's focused around DMP tool for you, those of you who know him. I think specifically within the DMP tool, he's focused on persistent IDs, and he sees the DMP tool as a way of strengthening the persistent ID graph, because your data management plan is a source where you're connecting together what the award is and what the data sets are and what the software is. So he sees, so he's doing some work, within this task force and the conversations that are being had there on strengthening what's called the PID graph, which really links together persistent IDs for data sets, persistent IDs for people, persistent IDs for for software and so on. In the open software space, we have Saeed Chowdhury, who is doing some work there, and Saeed's been heavily interested in there's in open source software, and in particularly in regards to the resiliency of that in the face of security, and is looking through that to see what we can do with RDA US as a voice in that, because the Cyber Resiliency Act, particularly in Europe, is drawing quite a bit of attention. US is trying to figure out how to respond, and what voice does RDA have in that, and that voice for RDA US. And in the cyber infrastructure and AI side, that's something that I'm leading and on an interim basis. And here too, we're pushing forward on persistent IDs. I think there's it's a little bit longer a talk, but there's a workshop to be had that tries to bring together our cyber infrastructure providers around persistent IDs. I think this is very relevant as in the United States, we have the NAIR pilot, which is trying to put out cyber infrastructure for artificial intelligence, and what role do persistent IDs play in that. So we're nudging that one forward. So again, so that this is not exclusive by any means, but one does need to focus. We're a small organization. One does need to focus, and these are the areas in which we're focusing. The contributions we are making to the Research Data Alliance globally, we are. Yolanda will be talking. We were absolutely delighted that Yolanda stayed on with us. Yolanda is giving some of her time in support of the Secretariat. We are also participating as an entity in representing RDA US on the RDA Regional Advisory Board. And, we're making contributions. And I say we, meaning the group, the program office and steering committee and the community make contributions to RDA governance bodies and groups. Rob Quick is going to talk about this in more detail. I have just 2 slides. One of them this logo, the wonderful logo that describes the program. So this is our program. It's a small program, but basically what this was built off of was the fact that, you know, RDA Global brings in international perspectives that are super, super valuable. So if we can understand what our US needs are in open science writ large, draw on the RDA US community and our partner organizations and help facilitate the work, the good work that goes on in the working groups, and target that for results that address specific US problems that are globally informed, that is very, very powerful. So, you know, we're modeling this. Thank you on the Tiger program, the European Union's Tiger program. We're a very small version of that, but doing the same thing is really just providing facilitation to reduce the overall burden of people volunteering to have working group and interest group outcomes using the platform, the international platform. It's a very valuable platform that is the RDA platform with its international views. I mean, it's just there's very few things that are quite like RDA in terms of its international strength. So using that to globally inform results that are relevant in the United States, and just helping that's a kind of a friction-filled flow right now. And so we're committed through the Tigers program to try to make that less friction filled. So I mentioned we are early. We are early on. You know, we started last summer. You know, we established our leadership last September. You know, we did our opening in Salzburg. Some of you probably saw our table there. You know, and we began our community outreach in earnest in December, and then our first Tigris working groups were just early in 2024. So again, we're quite small. You know, I think Yolanda, I think this one might be something you speak to.
Sure. This is piggybacking off of what Ferris was talking about with his secretariat contributions. But again, like him, I was given the option when we signed an agreement with Global to do some in-kind support to the secretariat. And I've been with RDA since 2014. I think many of you on the meeting know this, but I think my first plenary was in Netherlands. I think I was 2 weeks in with the different funding models for RDA US. I've been through from National Science Foundation through the Ronan Institute under Rebecca, and now I'm under Beth and the Indiana University team being supported at a 50% level. So I do some work for the US in terms of strategic communications and the US. So at this point, what my priorities have been is basically on the global front, helping them with maintain their communications. So as many of you know, there's been a lot of transition from we've had communication teams. I think that was as large as 7 to 10 people at certain times. And that's been phased down quite a bit up until recently. So the global team is growing. Each of the regions are starting to have their own communication representatives. So that's an exciting part right now. But what I'm helping to do, I think Alex is here. Alex has some people on the Europe team, just trying to bring everyone on board to understand what the different channels are, different frequencies of communication, what we've been doing up to this point, what we haven't been able to do because of resource limitations, and just trying to enact a larger, more robust communication plan going forward with the larger team. So as you all know, that's basically over the years, we've been doing newsletters, we do social media. The website has been huge with the website redesign taking place. I wasn't hands-on into the website implementation until recently. So at this point, I'm helping Ferris much more than I am, but just helping on understanding the fixes, what's in process, what are the functionalities that are being rolled out, how to communicate those to the community, how to start tracking our member statistics a little more efficiently, things like that. So that's a lot of my time as well. But as we can all I think every plenary have had some hosting support, helping with doing the volunteers. This plenary is a little less than what I've done in the past, but I think a lot of you remember back in Botswana when I was running around with my head cut off. So I've been there through it all. So happy to continue doing so. But that I think the plenary pathways, is that still there or is that hidden? I saw that on the existing slide. So I know Rob Quick has been involved in the pathways as his tab member too. So again, I've been help supplement, review, and things like that on the RDA pathways, but Rob Quick has had a huge role in reviewing and helping look at that as well. So I'm just happy to be here working with all of you for the next phase of RDA US. You have a great team that you're looking at right now and lots of good things to come, I'm sure.
All right, thank you, Yolanda. And let me just finish off by saying, please, we have a Slack channel. Please, for those of you in the US community, we are interested in having you join us. We have the Rob Quick will talk a tiny bit about Tiger Now and he'll talk about Tigris Now in the next subsection here, but there is a program session Monday that is Tiger and Tigris dedicated. So please bring that to your attention, and then do join us in Costa Rica at Plenary 23. And I will stop there, Robert. And I will stop sharing.
Great. Hello, everyone. We are still over 40 participants. We're holding on to everybody, so I appreciate that. We are really looking forward to hearing from some of you as well. I believe that next up, Lee, I was going to turn it back over to you and let CJ talk through. I believe he has the next set of slides from the Canada side, and then we'll hear from Rob Quick about Tigris.
Did we, Robert, I'm sorry, did we want to have time for questions at this?
We do. Thank you. We absolutely do. Thank you for bringing me back to the fold. So yes, please, you could post questions in the Zoom chat. You are certainly welcome to unmute and ask us questions to have a discussion. And we also have the collaborative doc that we've been posting in the chat channel where you can add your discussion there as well. And we'll try to comment as we go. Somebody already posted, it's always helpful to see what organizations identify as future trends. So thank you for responding to that slide that Lee posted earlier. So, does anybody have any pressing questions for Lee or Ferris or Yolanda or Beth regarding their slides or regarding strategies in the US and Canada? We will have some time later where I'll ask some specific questions of Beth and Lee and the group that have gathered here today about some things that we might be able to do in the future. But Katie, you took the question right out of my mouth. Katie put in the chat, what might you see as forthcoming in US and Canadian cooperation? So do we want to go ahead and tackle that a little bit now? And then we can talk about it again at the end of the session too.
Lead you. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean that is very much the theme of the discussion portion later on in the session. But I mean, yeah. So maybe we do. I don't know, Beth. Do you want to wait and we'll kind of have that as part of the broader discussion later on?
Yeah, yes, I think yes. Again, I mean, we have a section dedicated to that, Katie. So if you're okay with that,
worries,
well, okay, thank you. Okay,
I worry that if we get started on it, then we'll start to eat into the time of Rob and CJ. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's completely fair. So are there any, are there any anybody in the US or Canada who's online? Are there any objectives that you see that RDA US or RDA Canada, strategic directions that you didn't hear us talk about that you would like to see us pursue? That would be good questions for both Beth and Lee to answer. if anybody has anything like that. We have it all covered. We're amazing. I'm sure that is not true, but think about that question for later. Think about the institutions where you are located. Think about the groups and communities of practice where you are currently involved, and maybe we'll have some questions come out of that later. So if there are no questions now, we will move on to CJ's presentation. And Lee is going to share his screen, I believe.
Lee, do you want to share or you want me to share?
I think you can.
All right, I'll do that.
Great.
All right, so I'm assuming everyone can see the case studies and regional engagement in RDA piece. My name is CJ Woodford. I'm a project manager with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and I'll be speaking today about the Alliance's engagement with the Global Open Research Commons, or GORC, groups. And I was going to say this later in the slide, but having listened to Lee and Ferris and Beth and Yolanda earlier, I think it's important to mention that I was hired full-time with the World Data System, International Technology Office in Victoria, BC, to be a full-time research associate on this project. So I was dedicated to working with the Global Open Research Commons groups within RDA, and I'll tell you a little bit what those groups' intentions were and the outputs and how exactly the Alliance fit into it, as well as my role. But these groups are still active and they will continue. However, now that I'm working directly for the Alliance and not just funded by the Alliance through the World Data System, my role will no longer be 100% full-time. There are other things that need doing within the Alliance. But if you haven't heard of the Alliance before, the idea behind a Global Open Research Commons is an interoperable interconnection or network of research commons globally. And so what we mean by research commons are essentially these marketplaces or platforms or spaces where you have an integration or use of data, other research artifacts and outputs, as well as services, which could include things like services and tools and computing infrastructure, pretty much anything that can go into the research lifecycle. And so the Global Open Research Commons, or GORC, interest group was formed as a place where folks that identified with this idea of a commons, and it really can scale anywhere from like a repository, which is very focused on maybe data, all the way up to a large interconnection, such as the European Open Science Cloud. The GORC interest group was intended as a place where folks could come together and discuss the issues that face research commons, as well as work towards a roadmap for global alignment. So how do you actually not only create your own research commons in the particular context that you're working in, but then how do you have them interconnected globally? This spun up the International Model Working Group, which was where I was hired on full-time as a research associate to coordinate and support the group. The goal of this group was to create a model saying, what do you actually need to consider as someone who might be building or expanding or simply working with a research commons in your context so that it may become part of the GORC in the long term. So it was really just a list of what do you need to consider, non-prescriptive, so that you can look towards being interoperable on a global scale with other research commons and infrastructures. And so the way we kind of looked at this was that the model telling us the what do you need to consider would feed into the roadmap, which would tell you a little bit about how do you implement it or how do you get towards this global open research commons. And then both outputs would lead towards this idea of an interconnected system where research artifacts of all kinds are accessible to everyone, everywhere, at all times with the appropriate protocols and procedures in place. So part of the work that I did was help coordinate a landscape review or literature review. Part of the literature review was including a lot of resources from the Alliance. If you've never looked at the key documents part of the Alliance's website, there are a lot of documents and analyses on the current state of research software, of advanced research computing, as well as research data management in Canada and globally. So a lot of it take from the Alliance, as well as coordinating a speaker series where we heard from 12 different commons around the world that were regional, national, pan-national, discipline-specific, discipline agnostic, the whole works, to kind of inform what ended up being the model. And so the Alliance, as I said, fed into part of the research, the literature review, but was also a speaker in that speaker series. The model was kind of a list of attributes originally and went through multiple iterations through work with the working group. And that happened over a span of 4 plenary sessions, a workshop, 26 different meetings, 69 members, of which we now have 84. So folks have joined since the model became endorsed, which is pretty cool. And 6 task groups that worked really, really hard on getting the model together. These task groups met a lot more frequently than the working group. I just want to add, they sometimes met once or twice a week for about a span of 8 or 9 months. So it was a ton of work, and the Alliance was a part of both the working group and the task groups. So in addition to the Alliance funding my position with the World Data System to, essentially manage and be a research associate for this working group, they were also highly invested and a part of all of the pieces therein. And I'll mention in particular that within the working group and the task groups, we were fortunate enough to have Mark Leggett and Chen Zhang from the Alliance as part of those task groups, and Mark himself was a co-chair at one point. But we also had task group members from the US, and we were really fortunate to have them. And I'm going to point out Amy Nurnberger in particular because she's in the audience and was a real driving factor towards behind the engagement, or sorry, the engagement task group. Almost forgot what that was called, Amy, sorry. So the interest group came out with a set of essential elements for commons that the working group then took and made as a foundation for the model. So there's 9 essential elements that we've identified as part of a research commons that any research commons or research infrastructure could consider as they're building towards global interoperability. And behind or underneath these elements is where the model actually sits. So we have 9 top level elements that you need to consider. And then within each one of them, there are categories and subcategories of things to consider, as well as characteristics of each category and subcategory. So in the model itself, there's about 400 items, including KPIs and metrics that you can use to measure success. And so I'll highlight that the essential elements include governance structures, rules of participation and access, sustainability, engagement, and human capacity, which comprise human elements of your commons. So things that might not be obvious from the outside, or they're not like the hard things that you can pick up and hold, but they're a very essential part. These play into interoperability and standards and conventions. Interoperability and standards and conventions are also technical elements, of course, because as has already been discussed, having standards to help guide what you want to do, especially in these technical pieces of compute, storage, network, and authorization authentication infrastructure is important and key so that you're not reinventing the wheel every time. Other parts of technical elements to consider would be services and tools and research objects of all kinds. And of course, the key performance indicators and metrics to go with them. So that's the very top level overview of the essential elements. The model is built off of these and kind of drilled down into each one. There was about 95 or 96 KPIs and metrics and about 315 or so items within the model itself underneath these essential elements. So it was quite detailed, and the idea is that it's not prescriptive. So the model, not prescriptive guide for all stakeholders, people who are building, engaging with, expanding, funding, or writing policy around research commons. It's in a spreadsheet for now, but we're hoping to change that. It's organized by the essential elements that I've just mentioned. And each item in there has a description, examples, sources, and a consideration level. So there was a lot of very careful discussion and consideration around these considerations as we were building. It comes also with a glossary and key performance indicators and metrics. We do have an accompanying report that gives you more of a narrative understanding of what the model is. So that gives you a little bit more on the information and intent, the detailed methodology that we used, the narrative summary, the current and intended use of the model, as well as areas of future work. The model's already seen a lot of success. So this wasn't just something that the Alliance worked with on and helped fund that didn't go anywhere. It's currently being taken up in the international sphere. So in particular, the official adopters so far are Elixir, which is kind of taking an approach of their nodes might use the model to identify gaps. And they have an interesting challenge where things are already going really well for them. So why would they need a model? And so we're working on some, why would you adopt a model if things are already good for you? And so a future forward-looking perspective. SURF in the Netherlands is a national infrastructure, and they're helping use it to guide their governance discussions. And I'll also point out Reason, which is a proposed infrastructure in Norway that did probably the most comprehensive use of the model that I've seen, where they went into each individual consideration, each individual item and row in that spreadsheet to say, is this something that we want to consider and how? So that was really rad. We're also seeing interest for the model being taken up in other spaces. And in particular, I know the Alliance is interested in using the model to help identify gaps or ways forward and priority mapping, as well as some regional, what I would call commons, but may also be called clouds, such as the New England Research Cloud. And I think I saw Rory McNeil in the audience, so that's the person to ask if you want to know more about NERC. Future work and reflections, we're going to continue with adoption. We've got a birds of a feather session specifically around health data that I encourage you to check out. And the International Model Working Group is going to turn into the International Implementation Working Group, where we'll talk about new versions, implementations of maturity models, mapping to existing frameworks, and this idea of integrating clouds and commons. And I encourage you to check that out in Breakout 14 next week. If you're interested in the interest group and working group. So even though I'm no longer with the World Data System and I'm not part of the Alliance itself, I'm hoping to stay on as co-chair and help bring the GORC model forward into this bright new dawn, I suppose.
CJ, thank you very much. A lot of interesting stuff happening there. So we're going to move on and hear from Rob Quick regarding the Tigris program, which is part of RDA US.
Of course, I was still muted. Okay, so Beth mentioned the Tigris program starting out. Now, talk about this pretty briefly here, but wanted to shine a spotlight on some of the things that the Tigris program aims to do and some of the things that they're already doing. So starting with the general idea behind the Tiger program, and we did work very closely with Tiger, who was established before us and has started to service the RDA community, but we're really trying to take some of the heavy lifting that is involved with running a working group within the RDA off the backs of the people within the working group, so they can concentrate on delivering the goals and milestones and deliverables that they have defined within the working group case statements and charters. So the idea is that it takes not only effort to come to those products, but also effort to do organization, planning, dissemination, efforts to talk about what is happening in your group, to get the word out to others. So we hope to take some of those tasks, or at least help facilitate some of those tasks. So the Tigris program is Tigris. It stands for Targeted International Working Groups in the U.S. It will focus on U.S.-based activities, and at this stage is a relatively small pilot project that is working with some initial groups and looking for a longer-term sustainability as we move forward. So this facilitation consists of many tasks like communications, planning, other supports, and it's provided by a group that is very familiar with project management, Rob Ping, and then the RDA myself. I've been in the RDA since 2014 also, and like Yolanda, my first plenary was in Amsterdam back in 2014. I am currently the co-chair of the technical advisory board also, so I participate in some of the governance, but really what we do is have some insight into RDA as an organization and the mechanism, so we can help smooth the path into getting a RDA working group recognized, adopted, approved in the first place, so we can help with some of the organization during the working group's life cycle, that 18-month life cycle where they're trying to come up with the products. And then afterwards, we can help with things like with dissemination and adoption type projects. So these activities are uniquely delivered to each individual working group based on their needs. So we don't have a this is the thing that Tigris does each time with every working group. It's going to be based on the the place in the life cycle that the group is at, what their needs are, what they're missing, what they need help with in this facilitation. And just a kind of list of some of the tasks we anticipate doing in the planning stages, some initial landscape, helping with community engagement. Once we start up, we can help with onboarding, dissemination, engagement, many of the same things, but it's on that startup during the in progress phase. So when it's in that 18-month life cycle after it's been approved, we can help with activities, help scheduling webinars, things along those lines. And then in the final stage, there's this move towards dissemination of the outputs, even towards policy guidance, standardization, and adoption support, particularly. So the current Tigris effort, we are supporting 2 groups and looking for another. We're supporting the National PID Strategies Working Group in their dissemination and adoption activities, and with the recently endorsed document that was produced by John and Todd, who I see are both on this call. We will help them with that dissemination. We plan on hosting a series of webinars about PIDs and national strategies within the U.S. We're also looking at the Machine Actionable Data Management Planning Group and helping them out with some adoption projects. And we meet with them monthly to kind of assess their needs and make any changes that we need to make moving forward. And then we had named a third group, but we want to apply the Tigris effort equitably. Initially, the first group we were looking at here was also getting support from Tigris, so we wanted to not provide multiple support to a single group. So we are looking for an additional group. So if anybody in the audience is looking at starting up a working group and looking for potential support, please let us know. And I will stop with that, as I see we're running out of time for questions in this last thing, and I think it's going to be a interesting discussion. So
Rob, thank you. So we do have if I may jump in, we do have a question. Are the Tigris efforts focused mainly on US audiences, or does Tigris support international working groups dissemination?
So we are only at this point supporting US-based researchers and the dissemination to US relevant products that may, and I know from talking with Tiger and Tigris that oftentimes leads to also helping out with international issues, but at this point we are focused on the US and US relevant working groups where the outputs would be relevant to a US audience.
Great. Thank
I
you.
think it's important that the things that we'll be facilitating have come through RDA. So they'll have a global audience that are, as Rob mentioned, we hope to have impact in the US by backing them with RDA US.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so CJ has a follow-up question. How do you determine US relevant outputs and working groups?
So the initial working groups that we identified, we went through a process of proposing them to the steering committee, and the steering committee is about 15 people within the US who have been active within this research data sharing community. So we somewhat vetted them through the steering committee in this first stage. At later processes, we hope to have an application process where we go through a more subjective review as to which working groups to support. And again, this will be based on a larger group input of the steering committee as to what would be supported.
And I had a discussion with our Tiger counterparts this morning, and I was just talking with them about how there might be a working group that maybe doesn't have any US representation yet. but that it would be good for them to have representation. RDA US and the Tigris program could certainly reach out to all of our colleagues here in the US and find people who might be already be interested in that topic or already working on that topic and have them join the RDA working group, which would be a great way to add RDA US representation to an RDA working group. And Beth?
Yeah, and if I can just add to this, I mean, the whole impetus for kickstarting RDA US was to, again, to keep the community together, which was strong, but it was also to increase the relevance of RDA in the United States. And the way in which we do that is we speak with a single voice on issues that matter. And we take what RDA is doing and amplify stuff that has the likelihood for impact within the United States. So, I mean, as we grow, that can change. Right now, we're modest in size and targeted.
And as I depart, let me actually point people to the Tiger Tigris US Tiger Tigris session on Monday afternoon. Rob will represent the Tigris program on that, as I will be on a plane, but you can get more details about both the European effort and the US effort on that session.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for the questions.
Right. Oh, it's so nice to see everyone. So if you feel inclined to turn your video on, we'd love to see everybody from all across the globe. I see lots of attendees from lots of different areas. As we mentioned at the very beginning, I want to mention again, because I do see some of our, hi everyone. I do see some of our counterparts from South America have joined, and we're really glad to have you join us for this session. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the RDA Secretariat reached out to Beth Playley, and really it was Mark and then Lee, and invited us to give this session. So we are doing a US-Canada session, which is coming out of North America, obviously, but we completely understand that we have counterparts in South America who are not part of this, but we did mention at the very beginning and encourage everyone to please plan on attending the closing session at the end of next week, and we'll hear from our counterparts from South America too. So we're super pleased. And we would be happy to work on some collaborations all across the Americas, geographically speaking. So we're looking forward to meeting some of you, me for the first time. I'm maybe one of the newest folks on the call today, but Beth has been around since the founding of RDA, so she probably knows a lot more of you. And Lee has been around for a long time too. So with that behind me, we have about 20 minutes left in our session today, and we would love to hear from all of you. So let's just start out, because Katie asked a question earlier. What might you see as forthcoming in the US and Canadian as cooperative opportunities? And I will, speakers, if you'd like to raise your hands, or if you'd like to just jump right in, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton on to Lee or Beth, or Rob or Yolanda, or Ferris or CJ.
I mean, I'm happy to start us off if we'd like. I mean, this is one of the goals of today's sessions, is to kind of have this discussion and ask this question. I think there are tons of opportunities. So, I mean, one of the things that I talked about in my presentation was our research data management network of experts, where we do have standing expert groups, but we also routinely create new working groups, and those are sort of project based and usually time limited, aimed at developing particular deliverables or outcomes. And I just see so much potential there for coordination, certainly outside of Canada, and I think that could be one area that RDA US and RDA Canada and the Digital Research Alliance of Canada could be working together. So if there are areas of interest and we're thinking about working groups in our own sort of network context, I could see that only being enhanced by having a conversation, with RDA US and others to talk about areas of common interest, and then we could decide whether does it make sense to spin this up, rather than within the RDM network of experts in Canada, but rather within RDA itself. So I think that's sort of one area. Another area that I know that we've done in the past that was quite successful was sort of joint webinar series where we would invite or spread the invitation through both of our networks and sort of collaborate on content there in order to reach a broader audience. So I think that could be another area for fruitful collaborations. Yes, and that's a really good point, Beth. So we have worked collaboratively in the past with our colleagues in the data curation network in the US and have actually done some, we've opened up our expert and working groups to cross membership there.
So, yeah, so thank you, Lee. So is the Alliance, we heard about GORC and the interoperability protocol. And we have, in the United States, we have repositories. Is there something that could help, a demonstration of interoperability or something on, that's discipline specific, or, is there something specific there that could be driven by a science need that could effectively utilize the interoperability protocol and repositories on a couple ends? Shelley, do you have a related issue there?
I wonder if Amy is also here. I participated a little bit with GORC, and Amy, maybe you can help make the case, but some of the arguments were the concept of a commons and the infrastructure that the US has, especially government funded, has been challenged with supporting those sort of structures. And it would be fantastic to just come straight at that and see if we could, give a great argument or work through the funding model that requires that, because the GORC work was really fantastic. Is Amy still here? I don't see her. No, okay. I was only there for one meeting, so I don't feel comfortable. But maybe Lee, what Lee was. I believe there was some conversation of how difficult it was. I don't think there were very many US folks supporting GORC because of the implication that it was the commons that we were trying to build.
Fragmented.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we could come head on and just, or just call it something different and let everybody think that it's not a commons and we're just supporting this great idea.
Yeah, and I think what we're getting at, and Rory, we'll cue you up here, but I think what we're getting at, and I think are there topical interests that could bind us? And I think that's what the GORC is. It's a topical interest. So, and are there other topical interests that could be that could stimulate? I bet maybe just cross-country working group activity that's of benefit on both sides. Rory?
Yeah, just picking up on the commons idea, and actually I've discussed this with, I won't speak for Amy, she's gone, but I think and it was touched on briefly in CJ's slides. I worked on the GORC intensively with CJ and Mark. Interesting development in the US, I think, is the development of the New England Research Cloud, which is also becoming a commons. And so that may be, and MIT is a participant in that. So maybe that could be an example of actually they're explicitly now beginning to think about themselves as a cloud. And then there's the Alliance Cloud Connect in Canada, which has a lot of resonances with the New England Research Cloud. So I also think that the kind of commons and cloud angle would be a fruitful one for potential engagement.
I might also just mention very quickly that not only does Rory have a lot of insight onto all of the aspects with Cork, and then also the New England Research Cloud and some of these other items. He was also a big part of the funding proposal writing for Reason, the national infrastructure in Norway that I listed as one of the adopters, which would be a good, if you wanted to really go through the funding proposal part of it and using Gork for that aspect. Rory, I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but Rory has some like very intensive understanding of what that process looks like, having just gone through it on a national aspect.
Other thoughts on topical areas of overlap?
I'm just thinking cross promotion of each other's activities might it might not be topic specific, but if there's general things going on in Canada, we maybe just have a mechanism where we will frequently contact the alliance or with the representatives and find out what's happening. And then in turn, as the US region, we can communicate that to our membership in the US. So to increase awareness, so rather than just having these meetings or, oh yeah, there's a potential there, we can actually, as things are happening, keep everyone in the loop as we hear about things. And for example, if we have Tigris activities happening in the US, we'll share with Canada and give them an update that they can maybe leverage. But there might be, even though it's US focused, it might have some impact in the Canadian region too. So just enhancing our current communication process with them might be of mutual interest.
And let me say on the Tigris line and the Tiger line, RDA Global in general should be looking towards a future model where this type of support is offered to all working groups, right? So this is something that now has some regional aspects, but it would be good to provide some sort of support, again, for the reason that I said, so the working group members can concentrate on the outputs of those working groups. So I could see gathering some regional effort along the lines of along these lines of working group support, and you get an economy of scale, I think, and some diversity of skills. So that might be someplace we can think about what is the long-term view, not only for RDA, but for the regional areas within RDA.
And I know the RDA US areas of focus are around open science, open software. I'm curious to hear from our Canadian counterparts about how we might have collaborative efforts in those two spaces.
I would add cyber infrastructure and or
Absolutely.
AI, is our third area.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely, Beth. Thank you.
I'd add to that data sensitivity. That would be another area that of interest for us. So no, I mean, I think sensitive data, AI, the GORC model, all would be really good territory to explore for potential working groups. We're also quite interested in the concept of digital twins and how we can, as national infrastructure, support those. So I don't know if there's sort of interest on the US side there, but that could be another interest or working group that we'd have in common.
So yes, there is some effort overall in digital twins, specifically in RDA, with some U.S. backing for building immune digital twins, which is a new working group that is just starting out. But I do see, in fact, there was a session on digital twins that was kicking things off that got canceled. I'm not sure why it was canceled, but I think that there will be interest in digital twins. The issue there is it's such a very diverse project right now, right? You have the environmental, you have the human medical issues, you have the engineering, where digital twins really took off. But I think the answer is yes, there's a lot of interest within the US community in digital twins.
I think it needs to be digital twins applied to what? Because digital twins applied in an industrial setting have been around for a long time. They're basically a control system. So it's digital twins applied to what? And I think so some of the far-reaching digital twin applications are to the human body, to the human brain. I mean, to these massive ecosystems, and those are like, those are 20-year challenges. I mean, and they're interesting. And Rob and I have talked about this quite a bit, but where's RDA's relevance in digital twin applied to the human body? What's ready for standardization? What's ready for some consensus? RDA is a great consensus body. What's and it's a global consensus body. It's not quite a standards body yet, and it may get there, but right now it's excellent at pulling together international viewpoints and getting a consensus agreement on those and then moving those forward toward implementation. That's its strength. So where in the digital twin space is that relevant? We have on the AI topic, and I want to just get to I want to get something that with the Slack channel question. But on the, there's the AI, National AI Research Resource, NAIR pilot that's getting quite a bit of attention in the United States. It's an infrastructure resource, GPU heavy, trying to compete with, the Googles of the world for a place to train large language models. Good luck with that, but that's what it's trying to do. But it's trying to aggregate data sets, federal data sets, making them AI ready, accumulating models, trained models that can be, used and made available, pulling all that together for research use and educational use. And so I've actually talked with NIH about, it's okay, where bringing RDA's assets to the table in terms of what we can do, which is move things along and consensus building along towards standards. Where is that need? So, I mean, that's the lens that I bring to these settings, is so really, I think the question right now is where can, we join forces and bring that RDA lens into, I guess, maybe problems of joint concern. And just a perspective, but that's a perspective I bring to this.
Great. And to answer the question, I did go ahead and post the invitation to join RDA US Slack. And somebody did ask if Canada has something similar, a way for Canadian researchers or members of your alliance to reach out to each other and collaborate and work together. So I posted in the Slack that, if you're in the US or you would like to collaborate with RDA US members, the RDA US Slack channel is quite active. And if we were to find a way to cross-promote things between Canada and the US, that would be fantastic. And the Slack channel could be one of those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have a Slack channel yet, but we do have a variety of different listservs we use in Google Groups for the network. And then I'd say commonly we use a listserv called CanLib Data, and I can post. Oh, there, I can see Beth's already done that. Thank you, Beth. CanLib Data to communicate professionally on RDM issues in Canada. But thank you for posting the link to the Slack channel. I'll definitely join, and we can share that within our networks as well.
So can I bring up the RDA website issue? Robert, is this an okay time?
Yeah, I think it's a great time.
And this is where the RDA website, as we all know, is a work in progress. We're all pleased that the website is being reworked, and and early viewing of it. And I know Yolanda is here, Ferris has left, but I know, they're trying to take into consideration the differing views. I mean, fundamentally, we differ from Europe in that we do not have an America's funding agency. Like Europe has, the European Union is a large body of funding agency. So you can do things at a large region level that we are going to struggle with doing. So we've talked about, we were glad, again, we were preparing for this because it gave us multiple opportunities to get together to talk about it. And the topic of the website came up is, what do we want to put forward as a larger region? What common what do we put forward as a larger region that right now is the Americas? So, as Mark points out, it's it's Canada, the United States, it's Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. So how do we represent that, knowing again that we don't have a harmonizing funding agent that's going to allow us to do things as an entire region? So how do we balance that with what we do within our own countries? And I do think we want to present a coherent America's view, and the more we can point out points of intersection, and if nothing else, they're just maybe statements of cooperation that connect us together. I think the better it is for RDA as a whole, and I think for our region. And I know we have Mark on the call, and Mark, I know, has put quite a bit of time into the RDA Americas. So Mark, I don't know if you want to offer something here.
Yeah, I think your comments were good, Beth. I'm not sure what I would add. I think like a lot of these types of venues, the main value proposition with the RDA the Americas for the last few years has been the information sharing forum. I forget what the cadence of the meetings was. It might have been every 2 months. There were some nascent discussions around, and I think actually some real activity and outputs on translating webinars. So there were a few bits and pieces that were easy lifts, if I can put it that way. So I would certainly, I'm kind of segueing out as I retire, so I won't be involved. But I think there's lots of opportunities, not just in the geographic context, but I know that Europe has great and strong partnerships with the high performance computing and research software organizations in South and Central America. The internet kind of high capacity backbone efforts with undersea cables and all the rest is very topical. There's some very interesting collaborations between many of the countries in the Americas and Europe around research projects in genomics. There's the Chineka project that comes to mind. So there's some very interesting things out there that I think span not just the Americas, but also broader expansion into Europe as well. So I think that's worth seeing what what can happen with the larger group. Thanks, Beth.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So I do know that we are technically at the end of our times, and some people may need to leave. If you know colleagues who were not able to join us today, they can go to this session at any time. They can click on the collaborative doc, and they can go to the links, the PDFs from our talks. Recordings will be available within the next, I believe, RDA said 36 to 48 hours, which is fantastic. So if you have colleagues who would like to join the discussion, please encourage them. I did put actually all of us have been putting several notes in that collaborative doc about questions that were asked, some of the answers, things that were in chat, we were copying out of there and putting it in the collaborative doc. I can certainly stay around for a little bit longer if there are other questions. We really love to hear from our community. So does anybody else have anything else they'd like to ask?
I think maybe we should let people go, and they can
Yes.
want to stay can stay. Thank you all, really. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
On behalf of Lee and I, thank you, and all of us. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Robert, I actually have to jump off as well. So thanks very much for moderating and organizing.
Yes, absolutely. It's nice to meet all of you, and it's been great working together.
Great. Thanks.
Ricardo, you just raised your hand. Do you have a question? Oh, they were trying to log out. Oh, no, there he is. Hello.
Hello. Just a brief question, also just an idea related to
because I had experience with the Open Science MOOC, being trying to be translated to Spanish, and another initiative, the same with the document of taxonomy of open science, the Foster document. I also participate in the Spanish translation, but the main difference, I guess, between different ways to make people involved was the exposure. The first time I went to Europe and USA, I was impressed because everybody cared about gender, representatives, expertise, and trying to include and not include different domains, and so on. So every time they invite somebody, they know they empowering some people and not empowering another ones. So related to that, the Canada webpage, because with the new RDA webpage, I thought could be more easy to see who are the members, in which group they are working on, or at least in which group they are interested on. And that webpage in Canada was, wow, you know who is working on, I know who contact, you are giving credit to them, and at the same time, you are broadening the people who should be in the talk the next week. RDA Hillary is going to be in Chile. I know there is some guys in Chile who were participating in different degree and interest group and working group, but have been a mess to know who are right now in some way involved. So it gives more than language sometimes is to know who is working on or interested to work on, because it's not only language, it's not only the money, the USA, Europe, the colleague says because of the funders, but it's also there is not the same governance and people involved in those governance structures. I mean, you can search any synonym in data stewardship in any country in Latin America, and doesn't exist in any university. So it's a responsibility of the research. So there is some government structure that are beyond money, beyond knowledge. If we can contact who could be interested to become it's going to be super hard to decide. So it's not a language term. I guess it's a visualization issue. That's why I tell you, first time I saw the webpage of Canada Network Expert of Research Data Management was mind-blowing.
That's great. That's a really great recommendation to take back to the group. And I typed it into the question and answer area here so that the presenters who are already gone and some other folks who might come back to the notes can look at that, because that's really important, that if you have a project you're working on but you can't find other collaborators, that can be a real issue. So
or interested, because
actually,
a lot of people are seeing this YouTube streaming I don't know, experience in research data management or PID use, etc. There is no opportunity to implement it in my university or my institution, but I want to share more ideas. So that spaces are super important.
Yeah, and one of the outcomes that I'm hoping come from the PID conversation are documents that universities and institutions can take to their leadership. Has very specific recommendations about using PIDs, right? So even if you don't have something going on in your university or institution around PIDs, then having sort of best practices document or recommendations document you can take to your leadership could be really useful.
But the gap that is with data confirmation is they don't know why that is important. And
Right.
it's very easy to see, if I see from the United Kingdom, DOIs come data sites, they almost don't have any information about license. If I go to Cielo in Latin America, they almost have no metadata information if you check crossref. So it's not to give the information to the top, it's to meet all the people who are working on, are suffering on, and then go ahead. That's why the network or list or some place to see the expert in the field, I guess could be interesting.
And you probably saw this, but there is a session, I'm looking for it right now, the PID Slam.
It was a session, yesterday's session. They were talking about it, this
Yeah.
different strategy and implementation, and to make it even the RDM more alive. But it's also, meanwhile, you're not using it, you can have a spectacular metadata scheme, but if nobody using it, nobody's going to complete it.
Right, right. And I don't know if, did you attend that session yesterday?
Yeah, in the RDM session, yeah, it was a.
Yeah, the PID Slam, I'm looking to see.
No, I said PSD exam, no, because the schedule, like, and we're in.
Yeah, so
Another,
it looks
it's
like
that,
there's
but
a
I
lot
remember
of,
yesterday. I want to check it out then later on.
yeah, it looks like they did a good job of keeping notes like we did today. So if you wanted to go type in some of your recommendations, I just put the session link in the chat there.
Super.
And if you go, once you're in the session, at the bottom, it says collaborative session notes. So just like
Super.
we did today, we were keeping notes so that all the presenters can go back and refer to them, and our communities can come back and refer to them. It looks like they
Super.
did this thing. Not every session does that, but it looks like they did. So that could be a good way to make your voice heard there as well.
Super. I'm going to take a look later on today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. CJ, thank you so much. I think you are our session chair. So I think once you hit leave, I think that will end the call for everybody. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ricardo. Very nice to chat with you.
Thank you.
Bye.